Some disappearances begin quietly. Others unfold in front of hundreds of people, and still, no one sees anything. This is a case of 3 Brazilian tourists who, in 2020, vanished at the Santa Monica Pier, one of the most crowded and photographed places in California. What began as a simple vacation turned into one of the most baffling missing persons cases in Los Angeles County. That afternoon, the pier was packed. Families clustered near the Ferris wheel. Street performers played guitar along the boardwalk, and tourists lined up for photos with the Pacific sunset behind them. Bright lights, music, laughter, a perfect California evening. Among the crowd were Lucas, 27 years old, Carla, 25, and Rafael, 29, childhood friends on their first trip to the United States. They had saved for nearly 2 years. Every moment of the trip was documented. The airport arrival, their first In-N-Out burger, the long walk to the pier. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At 6:42 p.m., they posted a photo on Instagram, smiling in front of the Ferris wheel, the sky glowing orange and purple behind them. At 6:47 p.m., just 5 minutes later, they were gone. Witness accounts were chaotic and conflicting. One person claimed they saw the group walking toward the beach. Another said they were near the arcade. A child reported hearing someone scream, though no other witness could confirm it. Police arrived quickly but found only one item. Lucas's phone, half buried in the sand, its screen cracked. The last photo captured on the device showed nothing unusual, just a pier silhouette against the sunset. Or at least, that's what investigators believed at the time. The next days were frantic. Helicopters scanned the coastline. Dive teams searched more than 2 miles offshore. The families flew from Brazil to California, pleading for answers. International media covered the story relentlessly. Yet, despite all the resources and attention, investigators found no leads whatsoever. No footprints, no confirmed sightings, no useful security footage, no motive, and, most unsettling of all, not a single person could say with certainty where they had gone in those 5 minutes. As weeks passed, the case grew colder. Theories piled up: an accidental drowning, an abduction, a voluntary disappearance. None made sense. Not for 3 adults, all at once in plain sight, at one of the most crowded tourist locations in the country. Eventually, the investigation slowed. With no new evidence, the LAPD archived the case, labeling it as unresolved. For many, the story faded into memory, until 5 years later, almost exactly on the anniversary of their disappearance. In the early hours before dawn, a passing truck driver spotted 3 people standing on the side of a deserted highway, just 11 kilometers from the pier. They were dehydrated, confused, and wearing the exact same clothes from 2020. When paramedics asked who they were, the 3 exchanged frightened glances before whispering the same sentence: "We needed to come back now." That single phrase reopened the investigation, and, for the first time since the case began, something finally made sense, though not in a way anyone expected. What happened to Lucas, Carla, and Rafael during those missing 5 years? Why were their clothes unchanged? And what did now truly mean? The truth they carried would shock investigators, devastate their families, and reframe the entire case, revealing that the real mystery was not how they disappeared, but why they came back. When news broke that the 3 missing tourists had reappeared, the reaction was immediate. Authorities, journalists, and families wanted answers. But before anyone could ask the questions that had been buried for half a decade, the first challenge was simply confirming who these people were. The 3 individuals found on the highway were rushed to St. Mary's Medical Center. Their vital signs were weak. They were dehydrated, disoriented, and suffering from severe light sensitivity. As if they had been kept in the dark for a long time, doctors asked routine questions: names, birthdays, recent memories. The group responded slowly, often whispering, and always glancing at each other before speaking. But the details they gave matched perfectly with the identities of Lucas, Carla, and Rafael. The families were notified within hours. When they arrived, the reunion was not the emotional collapse many expected. Instead, it was tense, quiet, almost guarded. The parents embraced their children, but the 3 stood stiffly, like they hadn't yet processed where they were, or who they were with. Detectives immediately reopened the missing persons case, placing the three under protective supervision, not because they were suspects, but because they seemed afraid, not of the police, not of the media, but of something else entirely. The first interview took place in a controlled room inside the hospital. A single camera, two detectives, and a psychiatrist observing behind glass. Detective Morales leaned forward and spoke calmly. "Where have you been for the last 5 years?" The room fell silent. The three exchanged looks, swallowed, and Carla finally whispered, "We weren't allowed to leave." "By who?" Morales asked. Carla's hands trembled. We can't say that yet." The detectives pressed gently, but the group refused to elaborate. They weren't hostile, just terrified. Lucas repeated only one phrase. "We came back because now is the time. We didn't have a choice." Their clothes were examined next. Despite the 5-year gap, the fabric showed almost no degradation. No fading, no stretching, no signs of sun exposure or washing. This alone puzzled investigators. Clothing worn daily, or even occasionally, shows age, but these didn't. Another strange detail surfaced when their belongings were tested. Lucas's phone, found in the sand in 2020, had a final timestamp at 6:46 p.m., 1 minute before the reported disappearance. But during the new forensic scan, experts discovered a corrupted image file recorded at 6:47 p.m., the exact moment they vanished. The image was distorted, partially overwritten, and almost entirely unreadable. But one fragment, a small corner of the picture, showed something unexpected. A bright vertical streak of light. Not the sun, not a reflection, not anything common to the pier environment. It looked foreign, artificial, out of place. When investigators showed it to the trio, all three reacted instantly. Lucas recoiled. Carla covered her face. Raphael whispered, "You weren't supposed to find that." The detectives paused the interview right there. As the investigation expanded, more irregularities appeared. Medical tests revealed that although the trio had aged physically, their hair slightly longer, their bodies thinner, their internal biological markers told a different story. Their vitamin levels, hormone profiles, and muscle tone were consistent with people who had not been exposed to normal sunlight or physical activity for a very long period. But the strangest detail was time. Their body clock, the circadian rhythm, was completely desynchronized, as if they had lived in an environment without sunrise or sunset for months, or years. When detectives asked how long they believed they had been gone, Raphael answered, "We don't know. Where we were, time didn't work the same way." Meanwhile, journalists swarmed the hospital. Rumors spiraled. Abduction, cult involvement, human trafficking, psychological breakdown. But none of these theories explained the physical evidence, or the trio's haunting fear that they still couldn't explain. The LAPD requested that the three remain under restricted observation until they were stable enough for a second round of questioning. But that plan didn't hold. On the third night, at 2:13 a.m., a nurse checking on the trio found all three sitting upright in their beds, awake, alert, staring at the wall in complete silence. When she asked what was wrong, Carla replied without blinking, "He's here." The nurse froze. "Who's here?" Carla slowly lifted her hand and pointed toward the dark corner of the room. But no one was there. Security was called immediately. 2 officers swept the room. Nothing. No one. Yet the trio refused to sleep again. They insisted they had sensed a presence. Someone they knew. Someone they feared. The detectives realized something important. Whatever happened to these 3 tourists was not only physical, it was psychological, and the truth was about to surface, whether they were ready or not. The morning after the incident in the hospital room, detectives knew they had reached a turning point. Fear had taken hold of the trio. Fear of someone or something they refused to name, and yet investigators sensed that this fear wasn't rooted in fantasy. It was anchored in experience. Before speaking to the 3 again, detectives reviewed all existing evidence. The phone photo, the medical results, the inconsistent biological markers. They needed a new angle, something objective, verifiable, and not dependent on the trio's fragmented testimony. That angle came from a source no one expected. The Pier's archived surveillance footage. When the group first disappeared in 2020, investigators checked every available camera, but one feed, an old maintenance camera mounted under the pier, had been offline due to water damage. Now, 5 years later, while reviewing the archive system logs, a technician discovered that the camera had unexpectedly turned on for exactly 12 seconds at the time of the disappearance. 12 seconds. Then it went dead again. Even more unnerving, the clip had never been checked. Detectives opened the file. The footage was grainy, flickering, and distorted by moisture, but the timestamp was clear: 6:47 and 3 seconds p.m., the moment the trio vanished. In the frame, waves rolled calmly beneath the pier. Nothing unusual. Then, at second 4, the camera picked up something faint. A reflection? A flash? It wasn't clear. At second 6, the brightness intensified. At second 7, a sudden silhouette appeared on the sand. Not a person, more like a shape. A warped outline, tall and thin, standing still, facing the pier's walkway. At second 8, the figure flickered. At second 9, it vanished. Detectives replayed the clip dozens of times. The camera was too damaged to produce a reliable image, but there was enough there to raise questions. If the trio saw this light, or this figure, it might explain their reactions. When the investigators returned to the hospital, they showed the trio a still frame from a footage, a blurry silhouette, indistinct, ambiguous. But their reaction was immediate. Lucas's breathing quickened. Raphael pushed the image away. Carla whispered, trembling, "We told you he would come back." Detective Morales leaned in. "Who is he?" Carla didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the window, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Morales changed tactics, shifting to questions about their time away. "Did this person hold you somewhere? Were you imprisoned? Underground? In a building?" Raphael shook his head slowly. "It wasn't a place. Not the way you think of a place." "Then how would you describe it?" He hesitated before answering. "Empty, bright, loud, but also quiet. Like nothing was real. Like we were floating between moments." The psychiatrist, observing behind the glass, scribbled notes. Their descriptions didn't match trauma-induced hallucinations. They were too consistent. Too rehearsed? No, too aligned. Morales redirected. "Why didn't you try to escape?" Carla responded first. "We did, many times. But every time we tried, we came back to the same place. Not a room, not a building. A moment, a moment. Yes," she whispered. "The same moment, repeating over and over. We could move, but time didn't." Detectives exchanged glances. It didn't make sense, but neither did their biological results, their renegade clothes, or the corrupted photo. Then came the first breakthrough. When Raphael shifted in his chair, something fell from his pocket, a small piece of folded paper. A nurse picked it up earlier, assuming it was trash. Now Morales opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten message, shaky, unaligned, as if written in complete darkness. He said we could leave only when it was time to lose something. Morales looked up. "Who wrote this?" Raphael lowered his eyes. "We all did, because he made us choose." Choose what? The three fell silent, united by a fear detectives still couldn't comprehend. As the interview concluded, the psychiatrist joined Morales. "They're not lying," she said softly, "but they're also not telling the whole truth. They're protecting something or someone." "Who?" Morales asked. "The figure in the sand," she replied. "Whoever or whatever. That is, it matters more than anything else." Later that afternoon, detectives ran the distorted silhouette from a maintenance footage through an enhancement algorithm. The computer produced only a slightly sharpened outline. No face, no features, just a stretched, elongated shape that did not resemble a human figure in any natural way. But there was one detail, subtle, almost invisible, that changed everything. The figure was facing not the pier, but directly toward the camera, as if it knew it was being watched. And somewhere inside the hospital, the trio seemed to know that too. The discovery that the figure in the footage was staring directly at the camera forced detectives to reconsider their entire approach. What if the trio wasn't hiding the truth, but protecting themselves from it? To understand what really happened, investigators brought in a trauma specialist, Dr. Elise Warren, a psychologist known for her work with survivors of long-term isolation. She believed the key to the case wasn't the strange footage or corrupted data, but the trio's emotional state. People don't shut down because they're lying, she said. They shut down because they've lived through something they cannot yet process. Her first session with the trio happened in a controlled therapy room. No police, no pressure, just an attempt to understand the emotional timeline of the missing 5 years. The three sat close together, as if physical proximity was the only thing keeping them stable. Their hands shook. Their eyes darted to the corners of the room. Dr. Warren began with a simple question. You said he told you that you could leave only when it was time to lose something. What does that mean? Silence. Then Lucas answered. At first, he said softly, we thought he meant losing hope or losing strength, but that wasn't it. We lost track of other things. What things? Warren asked. Lucas struggled for words. Memories, he said, but not our own. Carla nodded. We remembered things that didn't belong to us, places we'd never been, people we never met, moments that weren't ours to remember. Warren leaned forward, carefully. Were these memories given to you? Carla's voice cracked. No, they were taken, one by one. As strange as it sounded, their emotional patterns supported the claim. Their fear wasn't physical harm. It was a forgetting of losing pieces of themselves they couldn't get back. Dr. Warren continued. Can you tell me what the first memory was? The first one you lost? Raphael stared at the floor. My sister's birthday, he said. Not the date. The feeling. The smell of the cake. The sound of her laugh. I know it happened, but I can't feel it. It's like reading a memory that belongs to someone else. Lucas added, I forgot my father's voice. Not completely, just the tone. The warmth. It's empty now. Then Carla spoke, barely audible. I lost the face of someone I loved. Who? Warren asked. Tears filled Carla's eyes. I don't know anymore. The room fell silent, not out of confusion, but out of understanding. The trio wasn't traumatized by torture or captivity. They were traumatized by absence, by the gradual erasure of emotional attachment. Warren took a deep breath. Did he, the figure, do this to you? Raphael nodded. He didn't speak in words. Not at first. It was like being pushed through someone else's memories, like drowning in a life that wasn't ours. Then came the moment that changed the investigation. Carla reached into her hospital gown pocket and pulled out something small, something none of the staff had noticed before. A necklace, a simple chain with no pendant. Old, tarnished, but significant. I woke up with this, she said, the day we returned. Morales examined it carefully. It didn't belong to Carla. It wasn't hers before the disappearance. There were faint scratches on the metal, almost like engravings that had been worn down by decades of touch. Warren asked gently, Do you know whose it is? Carla closed her eyes. I think it belonged to someone we met there, someone who didn't make it back. Detective froze. Morales leaned forward. Are you saying there were others? Lucas swallowed hard. We weren't the first. We weren't supposed to leave. He made us choose who would stay behind. Warren's pen fell from her hand. Who stayed? She asked. The trio didn't respond. Their eyes drifted toward the door, as if expecting someone to walk in, or as if the person who stayed behind was someone they still hoped would return. For the first time since their reappearance, the emotional core of the story emerged. These three survivors hadn't only escaped something unnatural. They had abandoned someone they cared about, and whoever that forgotten person was. Their memory was fading fast. If it disappeared completely, investigators feared the trio might never be able to tell the full story. And worse, that the emotional loss could be the final key to understanding why they were taken in the first place. Detectives now had a new question. one far more urgent than where the trio had been for 5 years. Who was the person who didn't return? The necklace Carla carried was the first tangible clue. It was old, worn, almost fragile. The faded engravings on the chain weren't decorative. They were etched deliberately, though time had nearly erased whatever message they once held. Morales brought the necklace to the forensics lab. Under magnification, technicians found a partial inscription. 3 letters, barely visible. IEL, it wasn't enough to form a full name, but it was enough to prove that the necklace belonged to someone specific. Someone the trio had known, or someone they had met in a place they couldn't describe. When investigators showed the magnified engraving to Lucas, Carla, and Raphael, their reactions were striking. Not fear this time, not confusion, but sorrow, deep, crushing sorrow. Dr. Warren sat with them, her voice steady and soft. Does this name mean something to you? Lucas stared at the image on the tablet. It should, he whispered. I know it should, but it's like trying to remember a dream you lived your whole life in and then woke up without the ending. Carla reached the necklace, holding it gently, almost reverently. I know we cared about them, she said. I just don't know why. Detectives realized something profound. This missing name, this missing person, wasn't just a footnote in their ordeal. They were the emotional center of it. But how do you identify someone who has been erased from memory? Detectives decided to retrace the trio's original trip in 2020. They pulled flight records, hotel guest logs, cell phone metadata, anything that might indicate whether a fourth person had originally been part of the trip. At first, nothing appeared unusual. 3 airline tickets, 3 hotel bookings, 3 phone numbers active in LA that week. Then an officer sorting through archival social media posts noticed something strange. A gap on Carla's profile, a photo album from the week before the trip. Last days before A showed only 8 photos, but metadata embedded in the upload suggested there had originally been 9. 1 photo had been deleted, not by Instagram, not by the platform, but manually and recently. Investigators contacted Instagram for server backups. After several hours of processing, engineers recovered a low-resolution thumbnail of the missing image. It showed the trio standing in a cafe, but there was clearly a fourth person in the frame, a figure sitting with them, smiling, leaning in, present, but the face had been corrupted in the file, blurred beyond visibility, not pixelated, not obscured, distorted, as if the face had been overwritten. Morales showed the recovered thumbnail to the trio. Lucas gasped. Carla covered her mouth. Raphael whispered, "It's them? I remember the feeling. I remember someone being there, but I can't remember who they were." Warren studied the trio carefully. "Do you remember loving this person?" she asked. All 3 answered, almost in sync. Yes. That single word tightened the investigation. The missing person wasn't random. They were emotionally significant to all 3. Detectives pressed further. Was this person taken with you? Silence. Did they stay behind? Silence. Did you choose to leave them? Tears began to fall. Carla finally spoke. "We didn't choose. He made us choose. He said one of us wouldn't go back. And we..." Her voice cracked. "We tried to choose ourselves, but he wouldn't let us." Raphael added, "So he chose for us. And when he did, something was taken from us. Our memories of them, piece by piece." Dr. Warren's expression tightened. He erased emotional bond. Lucas nodded. "Not completely. Just enough so we couldn't say their name out loud." Morales placed a photo on the table. "Is this the person who stayed behind?" The trio stared at the image, at the empty, corrupted face. And for the first time, all 3 began to sob. Not from fear, not from trauma, but from grief. "We don't know their name," Carla whispered, "but we know we love them, and we know we left them there." The room fell silent. The detectives finally understood the truth at the heart of the case. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a separation, a forced breaking of a bond so deep the trio's minds had tried to protect them by forgetting. But someone had stayed behind. Someone whose name ended in IEL. And someone who, even erased from memory, was still calling out to them. The emotional core of the mystery was no longer hidden. It was broken, waiting to be repaired. The name ending in ill haunted the investigation. It was the only fragment the trio hadn't lost, a partial echo of someone they loved, someone erased from their minds yet still anchored in their emotions. But detectives needed something more than sentiment. They needed proof. So they went back to the beginning, the planning of the trip. Investigators subpoenaed old WhatsApp backups, email threads, travel agency records, anything the trio might have touched before disappearing in 2020. The surviving data was incomplete, corrupted by phone changes and cloud syncing failures over 5 years. But digital forensics specialists found something surprising. A deleted group chat called LA 2020, We're Going. At first, it appeared empty. Only 3 visible participants, Lucas, Carla, and Raphael. But server logs told a different story. The chat originally had 4 members. Buried deep in the metadata, investigators found the username of the 4th, Gabriel.Costa, BR, Gabriel, a name ending in AL. Detectives immediately searched for travel records under that name and found them. A 4th airline ticket purchased on the same day, with the same credit card used for the hotel reservations, for reservations at a Santa Monica hostel, for entries in the building's digital key log on June 11, 2020. But the strangest part wasn't the existence of the 4th traveler. It was the erasure that followed. Every digital trace of Gabriel, every photo tag, every message, every comment, had been systematically deleted over the past 5 years. Not automatically, not by software, manually, deliberately, one by one. Yet the traces were still there, visible only in the background layers of corrupted images or in server logs most people would never see. When the recovered cafe photo from Chapter 5 was enhanced further, investigators found the outline of Gabriel's shoulders. The blurred face wasn't a glitch. It was overwritten, intentionally distorted to remove identifiable features. Detectives brought this new information to the trio. As the name Gabriel Costa appeared on screen, something shifted in the room. Lucas's hands went still. Raphael's breath caught. Carla closed her eyes and whispered, Gabriel. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Morales leaned forward. Does the name mean something to you now? Lucas nodded slowly. I don't remember his face, he said, but I remember the feeling. He was important. To all of us. Raphael added, he took the trip with us. I can feel that. Not in my memory, but here. He pressed a hand against his chest. It hurts because it's empty now. Carla said nothing. She simply stared at the necklace she had woken up with, the chain that clearly belonged to Gabriel. Dr. Warren stepped in gently. Do you understand what this means? You didn't imagine the 4th person. You didn't fabricate a memory. Gabriel existed. He was with you, and he didn't come back. The trio didn't respond, but their silence was confirmation enough. The investigation deepened. Detectives located Gabriel's family in Brazil. They had filed a missing persons report at the same time as the other 3 families in 2020. But over the years, the case went cold. And strangely, even his family's social media accounts showed unusual deletions. Photos missing, tags gone, comments erased, leaving empty reply chains behind. When investigators contacted Gabriel's mother for an interview, her reaction was heartbreaking. She said, I always felt like he didn't disappear. It was like he faded. Little pieces of him kept slipping away. From our photos, from our accounts, even from our memories, not all at once, slowly, as if he was being pulled away from the world. Detectives showed her the necklace. She recognized it instantly. Gabriel had worn it every day for years. I gave him this when he graduated. She said, I never thought I'd see it again. Back at the hospital, Dr. Warren observed an emotional shift in the trio. Knowing Gabriel's name didn't restore the memories, but restored the weight of them. The awareness that someone they loved deeply was still missing. Morales asked them one final question that night. Why do you think Gabriel didn't come back? Lucas answered first. Because one of us had to stay. Raphael followed. Because he chose to protect us. Then Carla whispered. Because he loved us more than we remembered. For the first time since their return, the trio collapsed into one another, crying not out of fear, but out of grief for someone whose memory was dissolving, yet whose sacrifice had defined their survival. The documentary begins to frame the mystery not as an abduction or supernatural event, but as an emotional story of four friends, one impossible choice, and a loss so deep it broke their memories to pieces. And the biggest question still remained: where was Gabriel now? With Gabriel's identity confirmed, the investigation shifted from who he was to where he could be now. 5 years had passed, yet no body, no evidence, no trace had ever been found. Detectives believed the answer wasn't in Los Angeles. It was hidden in the survivors' fragmented memories, the ones they couldn't fully articulate, but still felt. Dr. Warren proposed controlled memory reconstruction session using non-invasive sensory triggers, sounds, smells, and lighting that resembled environments described in trauma studies. Not hypnosis, not regression, just gentle activation of emotional pathways. The trio agreed. The session took place in a dim therapy auditorium. The only light came from a single overhead projector, casting soft waves of brightness across the room, simulating the disorienting empty brightness they had described earlier. As the three sat together, Dr. Warren spoke calmly. "I want you to tell me what you felt when you realized Gabriel wasn't coming back." Lucas's voice trembled. It felt like the world folded in on itself, like a moment stretched too far. Raphael added, like time wasn't moving forward, like it wasn't moving at all. Carla's eyes welled, like we were suspended between seconds. Warren adjusted the light, dimming it further. What was the place like? Lucas shook his head. It wasn't a place. It was the moment that kept repeating, over and over. "Describe it," Warren urged gently. Raphael whispered, "We were standing on sand, but the sky was wrong. Too white, too loud, like it hummed." "And Gabriel?" For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Carla said, "He was standing further back, watching us, like he knew something we didn't." "What did he say?" Lucas inhaled sharply. He said one of us had to stay, that it wasn't about punishment, it was about balance. Warren paused. "Balance." Raphael nodded. He said that crossing back wasn't free, that someone had to remain to keep the moment from collapsing. Detectives observing behind the glass exchanged glances. The description didn't match any known psychological condition. It was too consistent across all three survivors. "Carla, clench your hands." "We told him not to do it. We begged him, but he smiled and said it was already happening." "What was already happening?" Warren asked. Carla broke. "He said we were forgetting him, even before we left, like the world was letting go." Warren leaned forward. Did he choose to stay, or was he forced? Lucas's face tightened. He chose, because he didn't want any of us to lose ourselves completely. The emotional weight in the room was palpable, raw, heavy, almost suffocating. Warren pressed gently. "What happened in the final moment, before you came back?" Raphael closed his eyes. "I saw him fading, not dying, just dissolving, like he was stepping out of existence." Carla added, "And then everything went white, and we were here, back on the road, wearing the same clothes, like no time had passed at all." Lucas whispered the words that chilled the room. He stayed because he knew we wouldn't survive losing each other, so he let us lose him instead. For the first time, the trio openly wept, not from fear, but from a grief so profound it had remained buried beneath layers of erased memory. Dr. Warren allowed them to cry. Then she asked, "Do you think Gabriel is still there?" In that moment, silence. Then Raphael said, "I think he's wherever that place is, or whatever it is, but he's not gone, not fully." Carla nodded slowly. "I feel him when I hold the necklace, like he's trying to reach out, like he wants us to remember him." Lucas looked at Dr. Warren with a quiet resolve. If we forget him completely, he disappears, not just from our minds, from everywhere. Detectives realized something extraordinary. The trio didn't return simply because they were released. They returned because a moment, the place, the phenomenon, whatever it was, could not hold 4 people. It demanded a sacrifice. Gabriel's. The investigation now shifted from trauma to metaphysics, from evidence to meaning. A narrative was emerging, a story not of kidnapping, but of emotional exchange. A bond so strong it tore someone out of the world to preserve the others. But the case was not closed, because in the final seconds of the memory session, something unexpected happened. As the projector dimmed to black, Carla gasped, clutching her chest. She whispered, "He's trying to come back." Dr. Warren asked, "How you know?" Carla's voice broke, "Because I just remembered his last words, and he didn't say goodbye." In the days that followed the memory reconstruction session, the atmosphere around the trio shifted noticeably. They were no longer confused survivors of an unexplained disappearance. They were grieving friends, holding on to the fading outline of a person they could barely remember, yet had loved deeply. But one detail lingered. Carla's sudden realization at the end of the session. She claimed she remembered Gabriel's final words, and investigators needed to know what they were. The trio agreed to one final recorded interview, not in the hospital, not under interrogation, but in a quiet room illuminated only by natural morning light. Dr. Warren sat with them, not as their psychologist, but as a witness to their truth. She spoke softly. "You said Gabriel didn't say goodbye. What did he say?" Carla inhaled shakily, eyes fixed on the necklace in her hands. "I didn't remember before, but when the lights went dark, it came back. His voice, clear, like he was standing next to me." She paused, gathering strength. He said, "One day, you'll remember me, and when you do, don't come back for me." The room froze. Lucas whispered. He knew we would try. He knew we'd feel guilty. Raphael looked down. He knew leaving him would destroy us. Warren leaned forward. "Do you understand what he meant?" The trio nodded slowly, as if arriving at a painful truth together. Lucas said, "He chose to stay not because he wanted to disappear, but because he wanted us to live, to return to our families, to have lives that didn't end in that place." Carla added, "He didn't want us to spend the rest of our lives chasing him or chasing answers. He didn't want to haunt us." Raphael's voice cracked. He wanted to be remembered with love, not with guilt. But investigators needed to know why Gabriel believed they would try to go back, something the trio never once mentioned publicly. So Warren asked the final question. "Before you returned, did Gabriel ask you to do something?" The answer came slowly, painfully. Lucas nodded. He told us that if we ever remembered him fully, not just a feeling of him, but the truth of him, we'd want to return. Because love does that. It pulls you toward what you lost. Carla added, "He said the choice would break us. He said remembering him would hurt, but forgetting him would destroy him." Raphael wiped tears from his face. He said the only way he could protect us was by letting himself fade. Warren swallowed, deeply moved. "And now that you remember, does it hurt?" All 3 nodded. Lucas whispered, "More than anything. But it hurts in a way that feels right. Like love that finally found its way back." The truth settled like a weight across the room. Not supernatural, not impossible, but profoundly human. Gabriel stayed because he loved them. They survived because he let himself be forgotten. And now that memory was returning, slowly, painfully, his final message was clear. Don't come back for me. Not because he was lost, but because he wanted them to live without the burden of trying to rescue someone who could no longer be reached. Detective Morales ended the case summary with a statement that would later close the documentary. This wasn't an abduction case. This wasn't a supernatural event. This was a story about 4 friends caught in something none of us will ever fully understand, and one man whose love for them outweighed their ability to remember him. Weeks later, when the trio left the hospital, they did so quietly. No press, no interviews, no dramatic statements. Just 3 people holding each other up as they walked toward a world that felt unfamiliar, a world missing someone whose absence they could finally feel again. Before leaving, Carla placed a necklace on the hospital bench outside. "I think he wanted it to stay with the moment," she said softly. "Not with us. Not anymore." The camera lingers on the necklace as the trio walks away. 3 silhouettes stepping back into their lives, carrying the painful truth that love sometimes means letting go. And Gabriel's final words echo as the documentary closes. One day, you'll remember me. And when you do, don't come back.